I've just finished adding a new feature to make Gwulo's maps more useful, and in particular it can help if you're trying to work out what year an old Hong Kong photo was taken. So this is a short video to just show how it all works. This is the link to see Gwulo's maps, and if I click on that we get this page. Each marker on the page, these are the markers here, show one place page on Gwulo. Most places are buildings, but not always. So if we look at these as an example, we've got one for a village, one for a bridge, a curious one here, an abandoned holiday resort, Club Captain Bear. So the colour, the yellow marker, shows that it's something that's a ruin today. Something that's green means it's still there, still in existence, and something that's red means that it's already been demolished and is gone. A couple more examples, islands down here, and a lighthouse here on Waglan Island. If you want to see more information about a place, you just click on the name and that'll take you to the page for the place with a more detailed map and then any photos and any notes that we have about it. So what's the problem with the current system? Well, let's zoom into Central and I think it will quickly become clear. It's really become a victim of its own success. There are now so many markers, it can be slow work finding a place that you're looking for. So the first change I've made is to let you set a range of years that you're interested in and only show places that existed during those years. You can see it's down here, and I've given you a couple of examples. Let's click on this one. And now we only see places that existed in the years 1935 to 1950. Anything that was demolished before that time or anything that was built after that time is not shown. And at first glance it still looks sort of quite overwhelming, but if you zoom in a bit you find pretty quickly that no, it's actually about one marker per building. It's a lot more manageable. What have we got here? We've got King's Building. So these are all along the seafront. The old Queen's Building, Hong Kong Club Building here. And then this one's a bit different. We've got two markers. And what that's showing is that there was an older building, but it was demolished in 1948, and then a replacement Electra House that was finished in 1950. So that's what the coloured dots mean. If you see a red dot, it's something that was demolished during this period, and if you see a green dot, it's something new that first appeared, first completed during this period. The dots then, they highlight any changes that happened during the years that you've specified, and that can help us work out the date that a photo was taken. Let's use the photo from the previous video as an example. So here's the photo, and I'm going to make a rough guess that it was taken somewhere between 1930 and 1950. Now we'll update the map. We'll zoom in to take a closer look around Statue Square because that's very much the focus of the picture here. I'll also choose a background map and I'll use the one from 1901. It's a couple of decades earlier, but the layout of Hong Kong was pretty similar, so it works pretty well. And then we look for markers with dots, because anything with a dot is a change, and anything with a change will help us narrow down the range of possible years that the photo was taken. So here's one right down on the seafront. It's a statue of Sir Henry May, and it was demolished in 1942, so removed by the Japanese during the Japanese occupation. But if we look at the picture here, we can see that the statue was still there. So this picture must have been taken sometime before the war, sometime before 1941. So we come back to here and we say, all right, now we know we must be sometime between 1930 and 1941. So that reduces the number of dots. You can see a little cluster of dots over here. So that might be helpful. But they're back on Devoe Road. And unfortunately, most of Devoe Road is going to be out of sight, hidden behind these buildings. However, this one caught my eye. Again, it's a pair. And it's the Bank of East Asia's old building, demolished in 1933, and then their new building, completed in 1935. Let's take a closer look at that. And the reason I'm interested is because it had this tall tower. Let's take a look at the photos for a closer look. So we've got a couple of photos of it, all illuminated. This was dressed up for the coronation of King George VI in 1937. And you can see it's a very distinctive tower, very tall, with a stepped sides to it. And indeed, it's tall enough that we can still see it, so it's poking up over the roof of Queen's Building here. So that means that we know the picture can't have been taken before 1935, when the building was finished. And again, we can narrow down our range and update the details. What else have we got? There's another very well-known building just here. It's HSBC, and indeed we can see that in the picture. But unfortunately it was also finished in 1935, so it doesn't do anything to help us narrow down the range. Now, I think we're going to struggle with buildings around Central because most of them are going to be hidden by the buildings on the seafront. So let's have a look further up the hillside and see what we can find. Here's another couple of markers, and at first sight there looks to be a problem here. We've got St Joan Court, which is completed in 1939, but we don't get a red dot here. And in fact, similar house, same site, wasn't demolished until 1950. Have we got a mistake there? Let's take a closer look. Alright, here's the explanation. It was actually redeveloped in two parts. The western half was demolished to build the first generation St Joan Court pre-war. So let's see what we've got. So this is a similar house, and then this over here is the western half, and it certainly hasn't been demolished. So that means the photo must have been taken before St Joan Court is finished in 1939, and in fact looks before even the demolition was started. So we can trim back our range to, I'd say, 1938. What else are we going to see? Alright, something new over here. The McDonald Road Station on the Peak Tram line, finished in 1936. Okay, that could help. But unfortunately, I think... So here's the Peak Tram line coming down behind HSBC. So unfortunately, the station area is out of view behind there. Here's another one, Queen's Garden. Queen's Gardens, demolished in 1937, and they're usually pretty easy to spot. Some great big buildings. Alright, they're standing here. So they were demolished in 37, so we can't be later than that. We can just trim our range down again. So you can see how this works. I think that's close enough. 1935 to 1937. If we come back to look at HSBC, the stonework is already looking a little bit weathered here, so I think it's probably not the very first year, 1935, so probably somewhere like 1936 or 1937. So that's how we use it. We start off with a broad range, we look for the changes, we try and see if we can find the change in the photo. Depending on whether it is or isn't there, we can then narrow down the range, and we just go around that loop until we end up with a fairly accurate guess of the year. Two other tricks we can do with these new maps. Now, first of all, the map of a range of years here. It's a good way to highlight new developments in Hong Kong. I'll set the range to 1895. I'm using the keyboard just to type in the numbers here, to 1905. So we're looking at the turn of the century, and I'm going to use that 1901 map again, which is pretty much spot on this time. And you see this great cluster of green dots along here. So this is all new buildings going up on the big reclamation the reclamation from Devoe Road out to Connaught Road. There are a couple of oddities. We've got a couple of red dots as well, which seems kind of strange. If this is new land, why are we getting demolitions? Is that a mistake? Well, no, the explanation is that they are the old piers. So these were piers that used to run into the sea off Devoe Road, and they had to be demolished before the reclamation work could proceed. Zooming out a bit, we see another big cluster of green dots all around here, and this time these are buildings that have gone up along McDonald Road. So this was a time of expansion of Hong Kong. It's expanding south up the hillside here, and it's expanding north out into the harbour on this reclaimed land. Let's take another example. We're going to skip ahead 30 years. So we'll go from 1925 to 1935. See what we see. So this time Central pretty settled down, but quite a lot of change happening over here. You can see lots of green dots here. The 1901 map doesn't help. It apparently shows we're out in the sea. 1945, you can see, okay, it's another big reclamation, this time off the seafront of Wan Chai, and then in the 1920s, 1930s, the new buildings start going up on there. Something else to notice, a little curiosity, we've got a marker with a green and red dot. So what that means is that this place was completed and demolished during these years. And if we look at it, it's quite clear why that was. It was actually a temporary open-air theatre. Here's the page for it. So it was set up on the open land at Southhorn Playground. And no modesty involved. They declared themselves the classiest place of amusement in Hong Kong. But it really can't have been that classy, because it only lasted 1 year, well, less than a year. So from July to November 1932. There must have been something of a fashion for that at the time. If we look over at North Point, I could see another similar marker. And if we click that, that was another open-air cinema the previous year, 1931 to 1931. Then just to show that Kowloon isn't forgotten, we have a look to the north. And there's another big cluster of green dots up here. So this is the Kowloon Tong estate taking shape. That's all happening in the 20s and 30s. And something different here is that many of the markers are green still. So a lot of these buildings still exist and will be at least 90 years old. Now, the last of the new features, you've also got the choice to see a map showing buildings that existed in a single year. So if you're researching Hong Kong and you really want a snapshot of a specific year, this is the option you use. We've got several examples you can click on. Here's 1925, but again, you can choose any year that you're interested in. This feature works well in combination with the scanned maps that have been overlaid. So we've got a couple of links here. Here's 1845, for example. So these are all places that existed when this map was drawn. You can click on them for more information. And it's completely flexible. If you wanted to look at a different map, let's say the 1952 map, you'd come down here, you'd pick your year, 1952, you'd update the map, and then you'd select the overlay. Okay, and now you've got a snapshot of Hong Kong. The map is showing Hong Kong in 1952, and all these places are places that existed at that time. Now, the last two tips, if you're ever looking at a map and you're thinking, I want to share that with somebody, I want to put it into an email and send it to somebody, perhaps I want to put it on a comment or a note on Gwulo, just say, have a look at this map. And that's what this button is for. If you click that, you can see it's copied a link to the clipboard. Okay. So if I switch now to another browser, I can paste in the URL, go to that page, and I see exactly the same page we were just looking at. And the last one is, if you ever want to see all the places that we've got on Gwulo, not just the ones that are currently being filtered. Perhaps you want to see if there's something you're missing. That's what this button here is for. So it'll show the same view, but with absolutely everything that we've got. Well, I hope you'll give the new features a try and that they can help you with your research. If you have any questions about how this all works, just leave a message in the comments below and I'll get back to you. For any viewers watching this in Scotland or in southwest England, a heads up that I'm showing some of my favourite old Hong Kong photos in talks at Glasgow and Exeter next month, and it would be great if I can see you there. I'll put links to the details for that below. And that wraps up the latest video. Thank you very much for watching.